Welcome. Welcome everyone to Make Ideas Work Smarter, Not Harder speaker series. My name is Melissa Shillingford, and I'm so honored to have you all today for this special conversation that is very near and dear to my heart because I have the personal experience of transitioning from employee to entrepreneur. And so we're going to talk about unveiling the thrills and the challenges of consulting with Siani Jacobs of SJ Restorative Consulting. But before we dive into that conversation, I do want to just give you some background, some context to what is Make Ideas Work, what is it that we do, and also how can we partner together and why are we having these series. So again, my name is Melissa Shillingford, and I'm the founder of Make Ideas Work, where we partner with nonprofit organizations and mission-driven organizations who are committed to doing amazing work and having an impact in our communities. And I'm committed to helping these organizations work smarter, not harder. And we do that by providing human centered, equity centered project management and program management trainings and workshops, as well as coaching and capacity building services. So if you're interested or just want to have a conversation to learn more about our services, please feel free to reach out to www.makeideaswork.org. And so I really put these series together to generate some resources for nonprofit organizations and also to highlight some amazing people in my immediate circle who are doing fabulous work. And Siani is definitely one of them. And so for today, the flow of the conversation is pretty much I'm going to engage in a conversation with Siani for the first 30 minutes. And then we'll follow up with Q&A. So if during that time you have questions, please feel free to use the chat to add your questions. And then during Q&A, we'll pull up your questions and also respond to them. But feel free to also share your insights. If something resonates with you, type a +1, right? We love it. We love to hear from you all, like what's resonating, what can you connect to, and maybe even share a story about how this connects to you as well. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming my friend, my Haitian sister, Siani Jacobs of SJ Restorative Consulting.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you so much. I am so happy to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me to this conversation, and I'm just excited. I'm really
Listen, I'm excited to have you. Like, I feel like we talk so often, right? And I've always been like, we need to record this, right? We got to find a way for the world to eavesdrop on our conversation. And so, thank you so much for accepting the invitation to participate in this conversation. Um,
absolutely.
so, I want to start off by introducing you, but I really want to like just share the word with the world who you are and what is it that you do.
Yes. So I am Siani Jacobs. I'm a social justice consultant who is passionate about criminal justice reform and advancing restorative justice practices. So essentially, I equip organizations with basically a holistic approach and practical tools that they can use within social institutions by creating like customized evidence-based workshops and trainings and allowing them to be able to implement those restorative practices to cultivate healing and accountability within their organizations.
Wow, that's incredible. So I kind of want to dive a little deeper into like what is it that you do before we talk about like your transition and your role, your journey to how you got here. So so if you could like tell me about like what's the impact of the work that you do, right? So in your experience, how has providing restorative justice work have had an impact on the people that you serve?
Absolutely. So I was introduced to restorative justice when I was working within the Department of Corrections through an organization called Vera Institute of Justice. And from there, I fell in love with the work that I was doing. So, practicing it, I became a restorative justice practitioner and really founded SJ Restorative Consultant through the idea of implementing restorative justice. And so, for those who don't know, restorative justice is just a relational approach to addressing harm or conflict, right? Prioritizing accountability, healing, and social support. But the main difference is to the way you address conflict or harm is that in restorative justice, we don't take a punitive approach, right?
Mm,
So it's really a relational approach to help build relationships, to help folks get a clear understanding of how harm was caused and how they can address that harm.
mm. Like, what I love about what you shared is that we're centering humans, right? It's not like we're punishing them, we're not punishing us, but it's really about that healing process and
Yes.
we like developing that relationship afterwards, right?
Yeah.
Like working on the relationship experience.
Yeah. And so, like with the restorative justice, when I thought about SJ restorative consulting, I thought about my experiences within the criminal legal system
Mm,
and the importance of restorative justice within nonprofit organizations, just organizations in general. However, specifically in K through 12
mm,
education, right? So that's my focus is to be able to go within those K through 12 um, educational systems and to work side by side with educators and counselors and resource officers to help implement the restorative justice process that will, essentially help with reducing suspension, school bullying, just, cultivating relationships with students and staff, right? We know that that has been a common issue um, just across the nation, right? And in interactions within schools, but also just the idea of being able to build community. And
mm.
so that is my main focus. And so I find joy in doing that. And, the goal is to get to a point where we have this as a tool and a resource within the schools, and up as well as organizations, detention centers, correctional facilities, nonprofit organizations as well, to be able to address harm in a way that we don't re-traumatize like people and communities as well.
Yeah, I want to take a moment to pause and like just genuinely thank you for the work that you're doing. It is so important and critical. One, to disrupting that school to prison pipeline, right? And also providing young people and administrators and teachers and organizations with the tools to
Yeah,
really get at the source, right? And like you said, without re-traumatizing, how do we get from a place of like how do we get to a place where we are in community with each other, right?
absolutely.
And so I think it's so in that I just applaud you and I thank you for that work. And it's so necessary as well in the workplace because we are in workplace relationships as well, right? And so harm that folks can harm each other in the workplace.
Listen, it happens all of the time. And it's just how do we address it with, folks being on the same page? And a lot of times, I think even with restorative justice, when we are sitting in community healing circles, right? It allows everyone to be on an equal playing field. And so it's like, it's not just you're my boss and like you can talk to me any type of way, or I'm the teacher and I can talk to the student any type of way, but it really allows everyone's voice to be heard. And so that's
Mhm,
what I really enjoy about the actual process.
mhm,
And, it is just beautiful to be able to implement it. And it doesn't necessarily mean that, like, when it's all said and done, like, folks are going to be best friends, folks are, everything's going to go back to normal. It just creates a safe space for everyone to be heard. And so that's the main component of like restorative justice and what I, love. But also, when we think about the person who is harmed, victim, or, harm party, it allows them to have a voice and they are able to ask questions and, you know, um, wanting to know more about like why the harm was caused to them.
mhm.
So it's a beautiful dialogue. between folks, and it's not always, when I say beautiful, it's just the process, right?
Mhm, mhm,
Because sometimes, folks are able to use the restorative justice model within the criminal legal system, and that's not always beautiful, right? Depending
mhm.
on the scenarios and situations. So it's just, it's one of those things that I just really appreciate. I really appreciate the restorative justice model, and just enjoy doing this work.
Yeah, yeah, and your passion is definitely shining through as you speak about it. And so in my intro with Make Ideas Work, what we do is we also what I mentioned in my intro was that we center equity and human centered, programs and trainings. And so I wanted to hear from you as well. Like, what does centering equity or practicing equity in the work that you do? What does that look like?
Yeah. So in this work, I center equity by addressing implicit biases uh,
Hmm.
through transformative justice. So, like, within the schools, for example, like the discriminatory discipline policies, right, that they have in place that exclude Black and Brown students, or have more harsh punishment, things of that nature. So, implementing that transformative justice model, and transformative justice and restorative justice, they intertwine, right? But with transformative justice, it focuses on getting to the root system of the harm, right? Like the policies that are designed, whether they're in like your organizations, nonprofits, or just prisons, correctional facilities, addressing the implicit biases that most,
Mm,
and most of us, have. But transformative justice looks, like I said, at the root, but it also, the aspect of it is to identify, like, how do we change, right? How do we heal? How do we transform? And that's what the
mhm,
transformative justice really looks at. And so by using that model, that's how I center equity in this work,
mm.
that it applies to all systems.
Yes, yes. Thank you for highlighting that. So now that we know what you are passionate about and what is it that SJ Restorative Consulting is about, I want to take a step back and really like learn more about your journey, right? We're here to talk about that transition from being an employee to an entrepreneur. So like can you share with me and with the audience, and I know I have been we've been talking about this for some time now about your journey, but I really want everyone else to hear about, like, when was it that you noticed that you wanted to transition, right, from being an employee to an entrepreneur? Like, what was that moment? What was going on? And just
Yeah.
walk me through that journey.
So in 2022, I recognized that, I had a desire to shift from being an employee to, pursuing entrepreneurship.
Mhm,
And so during that time, I was employed by an organization. The experience was rewarding. And it was my first employer where I was able to work remotely. And
mhm,
so that was like one of the biggest perks for me, in all my times of being employed, like shifting to working remotely has been
mhm,
like really awesome. And so, throughout my time working with the organization and the work that I was doing, loved it. But I like pinpointed like four crucial, elements of my role that I like, that really resonated with me. And those things were working remotely, opportunities to be able to travel, engaging with other people, like in like, meetings and networking events, um, just being a part of like meaningful conversations, and
mhm,
then also being able to control my schedule.
mhm,
So those four things, um, really, like, there was a mindset shift. There was
mm,
really a mindset shift as I recognized that I love these things, but, I couldn't like, I just couldn't like ignore my true calling, which was the restorative justice and social justice,
mhm,
part of it, to where I can, really focus on restorative justice and implementing that model within systems. And so, looking at both sides, I was like, hey, how do I bring this together, for the benefits of myself and possibly becoming an entrepreneur? And so I started kind of like writing some things down, like just kind of thinking of a name that resonated with, you know, the restorative justice piece. And then really identifying like, what do I want to do? Do I want to
Mhm.
do like, do I want to, create a nonprofit, or do I want to work independently? There was just so many ideas that were coming to my mind. And so I really had to just write it down and just kind of brainstorm. And, you know, in that brainstorming, and thinking about like my initial idea was, prisons and schools. And so thinking about addressing the prison and school pipeline, and then the component of restorative justice, and that being my passion. So
Mhm.
bringing all of those together, that is what really, that's how SJ Restorative Consulting was founded. Yeah.
Yeah, and so much of what you shared resonate with me and my experience as well. And I am thinking about how did I use what I'm passionate about, right? What am I passionate about? What am I not only passionate about, but also what I'm good at, right?
Yes, yes. That is a key component because you can be
What am
passionate
I
about.
good at?
Oh, thank you. I'm glad that you brought that up. You can be passionate about something, but it's not for you. That's not what
Mm,
you should be doing, right?
yes.
And so I like that you brought that point up because again, but the main thing is, in order for you to identify, getting into a space of entrepreneurship, you first need to be able to understand what you're passionate about.
Yeah.
So that you're not just going into it. And a lot of people, they go into entrepreneurship and it's solely about money, right? Let's be honest, it's about money. And
Yeah.
so really just sitting down with yourself and identifying what are you passionate about, but
Mhm.
what are your capabilities in that space.
Yes, absolutely. And we had we talked about really briefly, something that I also like struggled with at that point was you mentioned this, but I coin it the closet entrepreneur. Right? Like while I was working, for previous organizations, I also had like this passion to do what I was doing there, but with more
Yeah,
at more organizations, right? Like I
yeah,
kind of want to just spread my wings and
yeah,
spread the love in some way. Like I knew I was good at organizing, getting stuff done, and like planning things from like A to Z. Like when I have a vision, Siani, you
yeah.
already know
Yes. I
vision.
mean, Melissa, you know that in the process, it was like you were heaven sent. Like in the process, of me having this idea, it wasn't necessarily that you've ever pushed to like, hey, leave your employer, but you always mentioned like in our conversation, like you just like are so passionate about restorative justice and you're like so passionate about this work, and I think that you should like really think about it, right? And the more I had conversations with you and like my mentor Lester Young and like other folks, it was like, what are you waiting for? Like what are you waiting for? And like I said, going back to those four components, it's like, wow. So now SJ Restorative Consulting is founded, but I
Mhm.
also get to keep you know, um, those four components that I shared, and now even have more flexibility around what it is that I can do. And
Yes.
so it's just been awesome. It's
Yeah.
like, you know, every day's not a walk in the like, every day is not awesome, but the idea of being able to work for myself is
And and I know this is not something that we had prepped for, but what I remember those conversations and what was the theme of those conversations was alignment,
yeah.
right? It's and so like, are you in alignment? Like, and I was like, Siani, like you're talking so passionately about this. Are you in alignment? are you? Because sometimes and this is how I felt personally when like I talk about like being this closet entrepreneur, and I'm like I felt kind of boxed in for a
Yes.
while, and I'm
Yes.
like I don't know what's happening, but I feel like I need to break free. I
And
want
it's
to break.
crazy that you say that, Melissa, because it's like so many people feel that way, but
Yeah.
they don't know what, like, they're not able to identify, truly
Mhm.
identify, because it takes self-reflection, right?
Mm,
Like, what do I love? And like, what are my triggers? Right?
mm,
Because sometimes we can get that confused, and it's like, maybe I just was having a bad day today in at work.
mm.
But then sometimes it's that nudge, like, break me out and get me out of this box. Like, I am ready to spread my wings and fly, right?
Yeah.
And that is, again, what most people go through, and they feel it, but they just don't know what the passion is, or, you know, what's next. I guess
Yeah.
that's the thing. It's like, what's next?
Yeah, and I also wanna add to that, right? One, betting on yourself, right?
Yes.
And betting on yourself. And a reminder for me is, wow, if I can pour into all these organizations, why can't I pour into myself? Why can't I
Absolutely.
bet on myself, right? But also having like sometimes you can know what that first step is, but taking it is the hard part.
Yes, it is.
Taking.
Yes, it is.
And
It
that's
is.
that leap of faith, right? That we always talk about. Like when
Absolutely.
you're taking that leap of faith, it's real. Like,
Yeah, I
oh,
mean, we're in 2024 where everything is just like, highly expensive. And it's like,
mhm,
taking this risk, right? Of like
mhm,
not really knowing how things are going to turn out. Like for me, being a mother of two
mhm,
children, like a 16-year-old and an 8-year-old. And so, like, in another year, my daughter will be going to college. And it's like, do you really have the time to be playing around, and like, what if this works and what if it doesn't work, and it's just like all of these thoughts that are going through your mind, and it's one of those things where you'll never know if you don't try. You'll never know. And again, I do want to say that, um, some of us have more flexibility than others.
yes.
Like, I'm married, right? So, like, it may be different for someone who is a single parent, but
Mhm,
that doesn't hold you or stop you from actually taking that step. That's something that you really want to do. Then, as long as you have planned for it, right? You have
mhm.
looked at the pros and the cons, and there's going to be so much that you're going to look at, and everything is not always going to play out the way that you have it on paper. So just being able to take the leap of faith, and like, just seeing, what's on the other side. I
Yeah.
mean, like you said, we're doing it every day in our day to day for other organizations and employers. So, I mean, just, really just taking that chance.
Yeah, and I practice that all the time, right? Like like the behaviors and my patterns that I, did when I was working for employers, I also do that in,
Yeah,
my business, right? So like making sure that I have my schedule and that I stick to my schedule. I make my lunch. I personally make my my lunch in the morning, making sure that I have it aside. You know, just some of those habits that you have attributed or developed in the workplace, you still have to apply that same discipline, even more so in when you're working for yourself, because now you have to you're accountable for yourself, right?
absolutely. But Melissa, I think that one of the things that is so amazing about you is that, like, with Make Ideas Work, it's like when I had the conversation with you, it was like, here are the tools that you need. This is what you need, and this is what you need, and that, and this, and these, all these different resources. And I was like, oh my God, like, so now what am I really waiting for? Like, what is my excuse, right? The
Mhm.
resources are out there. It's just about who are you connected to, right? Like, who are we talking to, that is helping us to like be empowered, and to give us that little push that we need, right? To take those steps.
Yeah, and you mentioned, I know you when we were talking about restorative justice, we talked about like community, but there's community is also so important in this line of work, right? In
Yep,
entrepreneurship, right? Like it can feel so lonely.
absolutely.
That it's called solopreneur for a reason, right?
Yes.
Like, like
I am so thankful that, like, you know, one of the things, and this is maybe like just a skill set or just a blessing, right? Is relationships, building.
mhm,
Just the connections that we make.
right,
Those connections are so important. Because the people that are in our connections, in our circles, are who we may refer back to,
mhm,
right? On these resources and conversations and encouragement, coaching, mentoring. So it's important to build relationships, right? So that you're not on an island by yourself. You're not doing
mhm,
anything solo, because this is really this work, right? It doesn't matter what you are in business for, whether it's hair, nails, you always need some type of guidance,
yeah,
mentorship, or, like just a community, like you said, that can help empower you. And like sometimes we just don't need to be going down a road making the same mistakes that someone else has already made for
yeah,
right? Like, so you shared a lot of like some of the challenges that you face.
mhm,
And like I was able to use those challenges and to be able to really kind of navigate in a different direction. And I'm very much thankful for that, right? Because it saved me time and energy.
yeah, yeah, and I think that's a really good segue to the next two questions, right? Which is like, what were some of the challenges that you may have faced during this journey, and also what were some of your lessons learned, right? As well.
So some of the challenges for me was just one, we already talked about it, like
Yeah.
embracing discomfort. Like,
Mm,
I was just like, "Oh my god, this feels so uncomfortable." But
mhm,
in the space of being uncomfortable is where growth happens, right? It's where
mm,
resilience happens, because you're learning how it's like you're preparing yourself, like, "If this happens, then I'm gonna do this," right? Like, it's like plan A, plan B, plan C, right? But also the idea of like the upfront cost, what it costs to sustain your business and to even start your business. For me as a consultant, right? Like I'm independent. So like, yes, I need to apply for funding, but it's like just starting off on, all of the other components that
yeah,
need to be handled, branding, conversations, meetings, all of those things. It takes time, right? So just like the upfront cost of it, I made things work, but that can be
mm,
very challenging.
yeah,
And then also just like as a consultant, like, really identifying like services, right? Customized services and pricing, and just really being able to understand my clients' needs, right? And
mm,
so, I wouldn't necessarily say that's a hard challenge, but it's just like when you're getting into this space and really creating services, it's not like the work that I do. There's a blueprint already there for consultants that you need to use. You need to customize it to, your expertise, and what you feel comfortable with.
yeah, yeah. And like, so towards the end, we'll definitely share some tips and some tools and strategies for those who are like interested in entrepreneurship and want to find out what are some tools that are available to them, right? But you're absolutely right. Some of those upfront costs, and some things you just don't expect,
Yeah,
right? Oh, I do need to find a way to like streamline, like when I get a new client and how to create a contract and how do I stay in touch with them, right? And so like understanding what softwares or tools are available to entrepreneurs that
yeah,
they probably did not even have to use before. And so in this process, it's a lot of not knowing what you don't know,
exactly.
right?
It's just the unknown. Like you just,
The unknown, right? And also connecting with people, and those relationships really matter. And so
yes,
the other thing I want to add to this, and I want to uplift some more, is our relationship. It was a lot of conversation that was
yeah,
free,
yeah,
unsolicited, sometimes
yeah,
solicited, right? But that's what we need more of as well. We need more of those
absolutely.
transparent conversations with people who are experienced and those who are trying to learn more about the field, right?
Absolutely. And I think that again, like make ideas work and like who you are as a person it's like, for you to be able to share those resources and say, like, girl, you don't need to use like QuickBooks. You're not there yet. Like, use these softwares. Like, these are like great startup, softwares that are more, that are free, right?
Mhm.
And like really just like sharing is caring. And it's like, yes, like you can find information on the internet, but being able to like go on the internet and like really not knowing like what is real, what is not, what is a scam, like what is, so having go again, folks, going back to your relationships and people who are already in the space and that have already identified the necessary resources that may be useful for your business.
Facts, facts, facts. So, so is there anything else that you want to share regarding the lessons learned from your experience?
I just, again, like I said, I just learned that networking and relationship building is
Mhm.
key, right?
It's so key.
Prioritizing time management is so important, right?
Mhm.
Like I said, for me as an independent consultant, like I don't have an admin, I don't have anyone yet on a team. So it's like, being able to do like that calendar management, looking at
Mhm.
my calendar. I mean, literally, it's like a second to the Bible. Like, seriously, like, Sunday, I'm already like looking at my calendar to see, like, okay, what meetings do I have? How long is it going to take? What do I need? Like, what information or resources do I need present on the call? So it's like, but then that's just only one side. So
Yeah.
if you're a mother or a father or, whatever role you play, it's like that doesn't even include your personal life, right? So it's
Yes.
like, the kids having a game, just, different things, just as a wife, like having time for your partner, So it's like all of these tasks have to be prioritized. And they all need their own individual time. That's one of the things that I learned, you can't mix them, you can't, you're like you're working from home, for instance. It takes nothing but a second to be like, let me stop and do the laundry. And I could be doing the laundry and then, I'm gonna jump on this call. No, like you still have to show up as if you are working for an employer. The same respect that you give to an employer, the same loyalty that you give to an employer, you need to be giving that to yourself. And so that's what's going to help you align, opportunities, trainings, workshops, speaking engagements, or, whatever it is that you have to do in your business. It's going to help you stay in order and to be able to flow each and every day a little bit more and more stress free. I mean, stress doesn't go away, but
It doesn't. It doesn't.
managing
Like
your
to
time
me,
is
it's kind of
definitely
is it the
managing your time is definitely it. I mean,
yeah.
Melissa, for you, like, starting, like, how did you do it? Like, right? Like, I know you have kids, you're a wife as well. Like, how did you do it? Like, starting
Listen,
off?
like real talk. It was scary AF. All right. Like it was scary because you're so used to that biweekly check, right? You're so used to
Oh
that.
God, it's
And
that's it.
yes. And so like I when I was let me say this, like, when I was that closet entrepreneur, I was doing this as a side business while I was working full time, right? I was doing it part time primarily because I was out of fear, right? I was at an organization that was going through some transition and I was on maternity leave and I was not sure. I just wasn't sure if
Wow.
I was going to have a job when I returned. I was terrified. All right. And so during my maternity leave, I yes, I took care of my newborn and my 4-year-old at the time, but also I absorbed. I went out to every single small business service class that they offered for small businesses, and whether it was marketing, branding, how to get new clients, everything. It was all over the boroughs in New York City. And I remember this like it was yesterday. I remember going through blizzards, taking the bus and the train at the time because I didn't have a vehicle. If you're in New York, you already know. It's hard to have a vehicle in New York. Um,
Yeah.
but all that to say, I was that much committed to learning. and that's a piece, right? Like it's ongoing, continuous learning. And so I was like, I want to learn everything that I need to know about developing and building a business, right? And then what so once I was like, all right, this is what I'm going to do as a side business, then I was like, let me find out who's doing something similar, right?
Wow.
And connect with that person. So you
Yeah.
talk about mentorship. I am so thankful that I just Googled who's doing project management for nonprofits out in New York. Literally just that. And I found this person. I just reached out. I actually found two people. I just reached out to them. One person, I mean, they both responded, which was, you just don't know
Yeah. You
till
don't
you
you
take
don't.
that step, right? And so this is why I'm like, just try it. What's the worst that the person can say? No. And or not respond, right?
Exactly.
And girl, I tell you, like it completely transformed, everything because so one of them, um, she was like, you know what? I am actually going to facilitate a project management workshop next month. Why don't you come and co-facilitate?
Wow,
And
that's
I
awesome.
know. And
That's
so
awesome.
this is what I'm talking about. Like when we talk about mentors and opportunities, and I'm just like, I was scared because I wasn't sure I was gonna, ready to do a
Yeah.
workshop. But that day I facilitated my first project management workshop in partnership with her at the support center. And I until this day, right, like full circle, 5 years later, last year I facilitated a project management workshop for the support center team,
Wow, that's
right?
awesome. That's awesome.
Such full circle. And this morning, I think I told you right before
Yes,
this, I also
yes.
facilitated a meeting management workshop for nonprofits, but that was through the support center. And so um anyway, that's all full circle. Shout out to the support center. All right.
Yeah, and it just again, everything that you're saying, it goes back to relationship building.
It does.
And a lot of times we think like, I mean, yes, some people do invent ideas that have not been invented, right? But like here
Mhm,
in 2024, like people are already doing the work, like
mhm,
reach out, humbly reach out and like ask, right? Some people are gonna say no, some people are not gonna want to share, but it's not the end of the world. Like there is, now you have like, just social media in itself where you can like learn so much. So, I
right.
just appreciate you just even sharing that with us because I
Yeah.
mean, that's important. Just
Yeah.
mentoring, coaching, all of that is important.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just, I'm a huge believer in just collaborating. And that's the other thing too, is
Yes.
when I first entered, I kind of felt this tension around, when I was engaging with clients just to learn. It was almost like they were preserving their
Yes.
knowledge, right?
Yes.
And so I mean, like I respect their hustle and their business and everything is not nothing, but I do believe in abundance, and I do believe that there's enough work for all of us for us to
Absolutely.
collaborate with
Yes.
each other, right?
And the
And
thing about it is that we all like, me and you can be doing the exact same thing. And I show up one way and you show up another way.
exactly.
It's like our energy cannot be the exact same way. Like,
Mhm.
there's gonna be something. And if you pay attention closely, it's gonna be something that is slightly different, right? So I agree.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, I love collaborations, and so, love collaborating with others, love learning, and I feel like that continuous learning has helped so much, and also building relationships with other people. But Siani, we have reached the point in our conversation because I feel like we can go on and on and on.
Yeah.
but we,
Yeah,
uh, but
such
we
a
have
great
reached.
conversation. It really is. And I think that so many people need to hear this.
So many people have reached out and it's like, Melissa, how do you do it? What do I need to do? Right. And
Yeah,
I'm like, let's have that conversation. And I'm happy that we have engaged in that conversation. But
absolutely.
I kid you not, like we can have a part two, a part three, because there's more to this, right?
Oh, yeah.
But I do want to like,
Just taking, like you said, it's really just taking, that step. And I think one of the conversations that we had just in closing is that, for me, despite me having a bachelor's degree, despite me having a master's degree, and all of those things, just taking that leap of like starting entrepreneurship, there was a fear of success.
Yeah. Oh
And
my.
we are gonna have to talk about that, and expand more on that, right? Like that sounds crazy. Like everyone wants to be successful, but this fear of success, like what does it look like on the other side? Like what happens when my business takes off? And then like what happens if people want to be invested? And it's just like, isn't that what you really wanted? Like,
Yeah.
it's like, Melissa, we have to like, there
We
has to be a part 2 to this,
we
but
have to.
fear of success. And I
We
can imagine, I don't know how many people is on this call, but I can imagine that there is, you may not identify it as that, but it's just like the fear of success, like just
yes.
blowing up, like your day-to-day, like TikToker or just an average person just creating a post, right? And then you go viral, like that feeling, right? So
Yeah.
I think about that. And I think that was like the number one thing that really held me back,
Yeah.
is knowing when I blow up, like what happens next.
And I wanna highlight that, right? Because oftentimes we are in our own way.
Yeah. Yeah.
We are in our own way. And so you're absolutely right. Like when we talked about how fear shows up for us, right? It could be, oh, the fear of the unknown, but it's also like, oh my gosh, this
Yeah.
can be real. And
Yes.
if it becomes real, oh, like it's
Yes.
happening. It's happening,
Yes,
and
yes, and
so
it's like you have to tackle it head on, right?
yeah.
Like, lately, I've just been a part of so many different initiatives,
Mhm.
so many, like, national conversations, like, I'll be traveling next month to New Mexico for, a
Please.
project, right? And it's like, I'm gradually feeling it, and I'm like, "Sis, lean into it, like, own it,
Yes.
lean into it, and don't be afraid. Like you have all of the right people in place that are going to support you. You
Yes.
have the necessary tools and resources and that I can do it, right? And my main goal is that I want to get there. I want to leave legacy for my family, right?
Mhm.
I want to be able to have impact and create positive change, right?
Mhm.
And so in order to do those things, I will have to be able to step out of my comfort zone and get uncomfortable.
Yes, because that's where the growth happens.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'd love to expand on, you know, further conversation about that because that is like it's really like an internal battle within yourself.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I would like to transition to the offering, right? Like oftentimes, like towards the end of these conversations, what I like to offer our listeners is something, or maybe their tips, or maybe something that you like to share and offer to those who may be considering transitioning. And so, what is it that you would like to offer to those who are listening or joining us today?
Absolutely. So I recently became an author to an
Ooh,
anthology for with Path to Redemption.
mhm,
Um, and so, for those who haven't purchased a copy, I will extend the offer to, after you purchase the book, to be able to provide a signed copy. So, I would definitely offer that. And
where can they go to purchase the book? Can they go to your website?
Yeah, so, sjrestorativeconsulting.com,
Hmm.
you'll be able to locate the copy of the anthology,
Hmm.
again, so just a signed copy, but also I'd like to share 7 strategies to unlock your creativity beyond the employee mindset.
Hmm.
So, those are the 2 things that I would love to offer to our audience today.
I love it. I love it. And so, what are some of those tips and strategies that you'd like to offer, just really briefly?
So the first one is to discover your passion, right? Like we already had that conversation, and it's a continued conversation. Discover your passion. Identify what it is that you love, right? And what is it that you're good at, right? So identifying what drives your enthusiasm and explore how you can leverage it effectively. Like being able to really, um, you know, write it down, make it plain, and just do it, right? So,
Mhm.
but in that process of discovering your passion, sometimes it takes a little bit of brainstorming. It can
Mm,
be more than one thing. So, list those things out, and see how it is that you can leverage, um, you know, that passion of yours.
yeah.
So the second one is embrace risk taking, right? And we've also kind of talked about that today. being able to just take risks, right? Stepping out of your comfort zone. Again, like that is one of the most difficult things that um one of the challenges that most people face to even take that first step, right? So embrace that. The third one is build a supportive network.
Mhm.
And so your network, we kind of talked about like, one of the things that you shared is like, for example, for myself, this year is a networking year for me, right?
Mm,
Being
mhm,
able to go, I've identified like 4 conferences that I want to attend where I can network with other restorative justice practitioners, as well as just, introducing myself, right?
mhm,
That's what's going to help build your clients. And just surrounding yourself with people that are like minded, that will help encourage you and inspire you.
mhm.
So, and the other one is, do you have that one pulled up?
Yes, we can have it for you. Oh, wait, but did you talk about self-care yet?
Prioritizing self-care, you
Yeah.
know, making sure that you're taking care of self. You can't show
Mm,
up for anyone, for your business, for your clients, if you're not taking care of yourself, whatever that looks like. Like for me, I did this past weekend IV hydration therapy. Uh,
mhm,
and that was an awesome experience, right? I recognized that I was like feeling drained and tired. I was able to go to Practice Purpose Solutions with Kendria, and she provided those services and talked about the benefits, right?
mhm.
Sometimes we have to look at ourselves and identify what it is that we need,
Yeah.
and whether or not it's getting a massage or traveling, taking time for self.
Yeah, I wanna add to that part too, right? Because I think sometimes folks may, um, associate self-care with, what you have to buy or a service that you have to pay for.
You're
And
right.
again, I'm all about free,
Yeah,
right? Goes by
yeah,
the name. And so, something that I like to do, I do believe that self-care is something that you practice every single day, right? It's a way for us
absolutely.
to be intentional and to be proactive about it. And so, what I do is I go on my 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 daily walks,
Yeah.
right? I gotta get that vitamin D, right?
Listen, you go.
I know you and I have also have had our walking meetings, right? And so,
Yes,
like,
yes.
I'm going on a walk, what meeting can I have during this walk? But I also use these meetings or these walks to refuel. So I will listen to like a really good podcast, right?
Yes,
So
yes.
again, I'm learning and I'm walking, right? That's
And
my way.
also, Melissa, now that you said that, you also have to be able to detach yourself sometimes, right?
Mhm,
Like
mhm.
we are constantly in work mode. Like the United States of America is like we just work ourselves. You know that statement, work
Work,
yourself.
work, work, work.
Like we don't want to get to that space, and it's like I need me time, right? I need
Yeah,
time to be able to reflect. I need time to be able to reset. And so yes, like whatever that takes, mindfulness and meditation, music, whatever it is, definitely prioritize your self-care.
absolutely. And then the
Um,
last one. Mhm,
yeah, the last one is just keep evolving, like never stop evolving, right? Invest into your growth. And it goes back to the conversation that we, talked about, like trainings, workshops,
mhm,
furthering your education in the work that you do, right? So that you are
yeah,
constantly expanding your knowledge and your skills. And so that like while there may be, 50 people doing the things that you do, there are so many different resources and trainings and different ways that it can be implemented, right? So being able to understand like, other ways to be effective, other ways to work smarter, and just to be able to uh, constantly stay on board, right? Like a lot of
mhm,
times you have conversations with people and they say, well, I've been doing this for 20 years. Well, I mean, we are in 2024, like it's like there is so much more, and like you could be advancing with new, as like for instance, technology, right? It's constantly
mhm.
advancing. So we want to stay up to date with whatever it is that we are in business for.
All right, I love it. So the book, they got to go to your website to get a
Yeah,
signed copy of that book. Thank you so much for those tips, Siani.
yeah.
I so appreciate that. And I just also want to add to your offerings as well. Because I did mention earlier, like, oh, there's some really great resources, some great tools
Absolutely,
for
yeah.
entrepreneurs. And
And you
so
are the queen for it.
you already know.
You literally make work so easy with the tools and the resources that you share. So go for it.
Yeah. So they won't be in the screen, but I'd love to just mention what these resources are. So one is find yourself like a really good software or platform to help streamline your processes, right? And so a couple that I like swear by or absolutely love are 17 Hats. 17 Hats is a software that I personally use to help me from the first point of contact to managing the project, right? To having, creating contracts, invoices, and also the accounting piece as well. All right. So it also tracks expenses, that all of that all in one. So that's 17hats.com. And I'll also include a link in the description. So that's one. Another one is monday.com, which is a project management tool that I absolutely love as well. It's a great way to like keep track of all your clients all in one place, but also track your progress with all your clients as well, right? And so as soon as your contract is executed, I like to plug in all of my deliverables and see and just basically project plan it ties,
That's awesome. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And just track your progress. So monday.com, 17 hats are really great tools to start it with.
Wow, yeah. I mean, I know that folks are, watching and like the more resources that you have, the more efficient your work is and the easier it is, like, right?
Absolutely. And we talked about like mentorship and community. So SCORE, they often so SCORE has chapters all over, like in different states, all over the country, and they often partner with small business services. But basically, SCORE is a program that provides free business coaching and mentorship for entrepreneurs, completely free. So these are people who are retired from being, CEOs or just, leadership roles, and who are now like giving back, right, by mentoring folks. So definitely check out Score Mentors. They also have a huge library of trainings and webinars that you can also learn from. So completely free. And the last thing I'll also share is an, finding a community. And one community that I had joined recently, like last year, is the Association of Nonprofit Specialists, right? And so finding an association of folks who are doing similar work where you can again learn from and connect with. What I love about the Association of Nonprofit Specialists is that they do have like these monthly circles where we connect, we learn about like what
Yeah.
folks are doing and how we can also support each other. And
That's
so
awesome.
I love all the services that they offer. And so check them out. I believe they have an event coming up in April that I strongly recommend, and I'll also put on blast um, on my LinkedIn. So I think those are really great starting points if you are considering
Absolutely.
those transition, just to explore them and just to have those conversations with people, right? Just to learn more from them.
Yeah.
That's all I have. Alex, are there any questions that have been bubbling up for folks? All right, I'm going to take that as a no. I want to thank you all for joining us. And I also want to highlight, like you talked about self-care. Next week, all right, we are engaging in a conversation with another sister of mine called Beyond the Hustle and Finding Flow. So
Um,
strategies to nourish your mind, body, and soul in the nonprofit world.
wow. Listen, I have to tune into that and you all have to tune into it. I mean, because that is so important. It is so important, regardless if you're an entrepreneur or not. So that's an exciting conversation to have.
Oh, thank you, thank you. I'm seeing some love in the chat, so I just want to highlight them. Thank you so much. Thank
Yes.
you. And this is another one, great conversation. So thank you all so much. Let's keep the conversation going. And if there's something that really
Absolutely.
stuck out to you all as listeners, please add it to the chat. And we love to hear from you all.
And
Tiana,
Melissa, I want to thank you, publicly. I do. I want to thank you. I truly, truly love you from the bottom of my heart, seriously. And it has nothing to do with just entrepreneurship. You're such a good listener. Like, you empower people. It's like, you folks need to check out your website and the work that you're actually doing, and just like the vision that you have for women, right? And just empowerment. And a lot of times it's like, you know, you hear it, you're around people, like, is it genuine, right? And like for you, it's like every conversation that we've had, it's always just been so genuine. And again, it's not about what I can get, right? But it's about like surrounding myself with someone who is just in align with your purpose and what it is that you do to help others. So just I'm just appreciative of you even opening up this opportunity for us to have this conversation. And we need to be having more conversations like this, more positive conversations, and conversations that share knowledge and resources with other people in the community who want to do better for themselves.
Tiani, I received that. Thank you. Yeah, I so appreciate everything that you have shared. I appreciate our friendship. I appreciate just being in community and also just being of service to you and the work that you're doing. To see you like just doing things, big things, I'm just like,
Thank you. Yes, it takes a little, I mean, even like I said, in conversation with other leaders and my bosses and people, just like really like, what is it that you love? What is it, that passion? So that's what I want to leave with you all today. Like, what is your passion, and like, how do you take that and make
yeah.
something out of it?
And what I'm going to leave them with is one last thing. If you are scared, do it scared.
Yes.
If you are scared, do it scared. All right. Anything else, Tiani?
Um, no, I mean, yeah, you just like Nike said, just do it. And
Do
it's
it.
you will not know. You won't know until you actually try. And so
That is good.
um I do have a quote that I seen and
Mhm.
remembered um seeing it online, and it said, if you aren't failing, you aren't trying. And if you aren't trying, you aren't succeeding.
Mm,
Right. And so it's important that you take that message and do what you will with it. And hopefully, the next time we have these conversations, we'll have more people in the chat that may reflect back on this conversation as motivation. So again, thank you again, Melissa.
yes. And with that, my friends, I just want to thank you all for joining in, for tuning in. Really appreciate you. And I hope you do walk away with something that was valuable, if not to you, then someone in your circle or in your community. Um,
Absolutely.
so thanks again. And with that, we're going to conclude. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, everyone, for coming.
All right.